So just a quick introduction. We had talked about the idea that the Office of EMS at NHTSA has been very interested in trying to improve the interoperability of the NEMSIS standard. And with 3.5 coming out, NEMSIS version 3.5, and the 21st Century Cures Act and some requirements for interoperability that will be soon coming into play, there was an interest in being able to ensure that with the new version of NEMSIS, we're meeting those requirements and that we're providing tools that the vendors can utilize to share data. So we were excited to find out about the work that IHE was doing, particularly that Andrea Forquet was completing with that group. She has developed 3 basically what's called profiles that are important to EMS and ones that will be valuable to us. So we're asked if she would do a deep dive on each of those over the course of the next 3 days, today, tomorrow, and then the final one will be reviewed during the NEMSIS v3 implementation call. So without further ado, is it all right if I go ahead and turn it over to you, Andrea, and you can talk about the PCS?
Hello, yes, so I'm Andrea Forquet, and I am working with IHE USA and IHE International as well with these profiles for the past few years. And I am gonna walk you guys through what the profile is, and hopefully we can generate some questions. I also have a public comment document up if you're not sure how to write out a public comment. We can, during this session, we can write out some comments on the document that I have, and that's a way that we can help you submit. So I'm gonna share my screen. Is there anyone who hasn't viewed this before, or hasn't read through the profile, or at least a good summary of it, just so I know where everyone's at? Okay, so I'm gonna take that as everyone has at least read something. So this is our Paramedicine Care Summary, and we're gonna start. I'm just gonna give you an overview of the volume 1 so we can understand this. And so when we have, sorry for the construction in the background, actors and transactions, here in IHE, we are talking about the system actors. So we have system content creators and system content consumers, and our document sharing covers both CDA and FHIR transactions, such as PCC1 and the MHD transaction for FHIR document sharing. And so it's very specified. So when we talk about actors, we're talking about system actors, not business actors in our field. So it's kind of a little bit more generalized. And so we have, in this profile, we have 2 types of documents that you can generate. You have your Paramedicine Care Summary in your clinical subset, and you have your complete report. The clinical subset will be for submitting the run report at arrival or pre-arrival to an emergency room, as well as the and so that's going to include patient information that you do currently have in vitals and any pertinent clinical information. And the complete report will include everything in your report, or at least as close to everything that I could map, so that the data elements and the information in your report can then be used for things like registry submissions and quality metrics, even within the hospital on the patient as well. So so your EMS systems would be considered content creators, and this would be required. You would be required to generate both of them, and the consumer of that information is required to at least support one of these options. So they can choose either to just keep the clinical subset or the complete report. And we have our trigger events here, which is just, it's very, for now, it's very vague, just so we can, because, you know, patient handoff. We say like at patient handoff, but that can be adjusted to when you're trying to alert a patient's arrival as well. And so this kind of goes through and just references where you're going to be able to find the content consumer details, which will be in the volume 3 or 2. And so we have your content consumer and creator options. We have our CDA option and you have your FHIR option. You can do either one or both. It is up to your system. And the consumer has to at least support one of the options, the view option, document import option, etc. And we have added options such as the clinical data import option subset. If they just want that specific subset, they have the quality data import option, which means they're going to include whatever data that is pertinent for their quality measures, which is more along the lines of like, they'll include like when you picked up the patient, when was handoff, and a few other like structured elements that don't necessarily come with the clinical subset, and the trauma data import option, which means, again, you know, things like triaging and like height of the fall, injury information, etc.
Could I ask a question about that?
Yes.
So this is David Saylor with MetaView. I just wanted to, when it says options, so IHE would queries from our system, is that correct?
These are, so the way that this, the document sharing transaction that takes place here is that your system would be providing this information to the consumer, and then it's, like I said, you can either put it in the FHIR format or the CDA format. These are the options for, say, like a system like Cerner or Epic when they're testing, right? When they're implementing their test, being like, okay, I'm gonna support this option only because this option only because I only want to have the clinical subset information in my system. I don't only want to build it up.
So this is just the format we're providing, or is it a dynamic option that we're going to be asked to do view option or asked to do document import option? So I'm not quite sure what an option is or how this actually flows.
So a view option would be like if you submitted the document and they decided not to consume any specified data. So they say, this is fine. I just want to look at what you're submitting. I don't want to consume any data. So it's kind of like this is like, you know, a PDF view or like a, you know, and you have like the document import option where you can take in the whole document and the sections associated with that document and everything. You have the data, you have your sections. It goes from like, this is if you like view it from like a top to bottom on like how detailed it gets, like how detailed they want the information here. And then these are the added options, which are like very specific data elements that are for consumption. So they can just say, I only want like the view option, but I definitely want to consume the trauma data import, the trauma data here because my hospital is a level 1 trauma center and it's better to have, and I have to report to the state on all trauma injuries, etc. that come in. And this is important to me. This is a dynamic build out for more of the hospital. You just have to submit the data in.
Is there any sample of this? Like here's what the view option looks like. Here's what the document import looks like. Here's what the trauma data looks like.
Yes. I'm going to make you dizzy for a second, okay? Yes, there is. There's in the volume 3, so that each of those had a section reference to volume 3. So we have close to the end. I guess I'm making you dizzy. We have the concept domains over here. Nope. I think it's just in FHIR, but sorry. I know it's in the volume, I just have to find it. I have a lot of tables here. Okay, here you go. These are for the specified, like the clinical data and trauma. So we have these tables, which I think are out of date, which is part of my personal public comments. So I have to update these CDA and possibly FHIR locations. So it's basically saying these are the data elements that are going to be included in the trauma data import option. So you have your dispatch date, when they arrived at scene. We have like a bunch of times here, the transport mode. I'm so sorry, they're doing construction today. Some vital signs as well, and assessments as well. So, and this is for the trauma data import option. So these are the ones that they have to consume if they want to support that option. And I believe before that, yeah.
So somebody clicks on this option and we just output those data elements?
Yes, so you're gonna I have like the tables of all the data elements and things that you're gonna output. I would say it's highly informed by Nemesis. These elements that I have over here, and it'll say you're gonna submit all these. You're gonna submit these data elements to fulfill your role. And yes, and then the hospital not really clicks a button, like it's not going to be at the user level, but it's going to be at like the system level, being like, Epic or Cerner would be like, your hospital can like maybe buy a package that supports this, or et cetera. It's more of like the options that the hospitals can do for consuming the data that you're putting out, and like keeping it and storing it in whatever format they would like, and is best for them. I hope that helps.
It does, yes.
Okay, good.
Just trying to get a sense of the expected workflow and the technical requirements for us.
Yeah, of course. And I understand this is pretty, IHE is pretty new to a lot of you. So, and the profile writing process is a bit weird to look at first glance. So, okay, so we have our options here, and each of these right here we have, each of these sections are the sections that are going to tell you what the information that it will be needed to fulfill this option will be located in this section, and it has each a different section for these. We have no required actor groupings. We're just kind of living in the content creator, content consumer actors, which are very solid actors for within IHE, and those will be the actors that you will sign up for if you go to Connectathon. So we have our overview of the paramedicine ePCR, and we have our concepts of why it's important to be having this electronic profile for this use case. We have a heart attack use case over here that kind of goes through kind of like a little bit of the flow of like where exactly this profile lives in like the workflow, not like exactly like workflow capital W, but the workflow of a an everyday run. again, we have our content creator, content consumer, showing that the information goes pretty much one way. And you're using the transaction called PCC1. So this is kind of like if you're signing up for Connectathon, they're going to ask you what transactions are you going to test, and so the profile you say we'll be testing PCC1, and probably MHT. I think I have that labeled somewhere else, but yes. So we have like our main flow post conditions. This is all the use case scenario stuff. We have our security considerations, which are generated by the IT infrastructure domain in IHE. And this is the link to go to it. It's hyperlinked. I don't believe it's broken. So if you're interested, you can, in the security considerations, we have cross-profile considerations, specifically for spelling out that this can be leveraged to support the quality outcomes reporting EMS profile, because a lot of the data elements that can be used for core, because core does cover a little bit more than just the closing loop. And so it can be used for reporting to trauma registries as well. And so that's why we're saying, this can be used for core as well. Information in here. And then we talk about XD and XDS, which I'm very much less familiar about. And I have, this has to do with like multi-patient queries and single patient queries, and obviously XDS. I'm not great with questions here, but if you do have questions, John Murky from IHE, he works with the IHE USA initiative, and he is the co-chair of the IT infrastructure group, can answer any of these questions you have. And of course, you can also look these up at the IHE.net site. And if you would like me to give you the link to that as well, you can search all the abbreviations here and find it on the resource page of IHE.net.
So this is Lori Forcat. I'm the Quality Research and Public Health Co-Chair. Just to kind of wrap up some of the stuff that I was hearing in some questions and what Andrea was saying. First of all, you as an ePCR would be responsible for creating the content, right? So you're going to be a content creator. Typically, you're anticipating that the hospital system is likely your content consumer. So all those options Andrea was showing earlier, it's up to that content consumer or the hospital's EMR system to be able to take what you put out, whether you put it out as a CDA document or a FHIR document, and bring it into their system, either to just display it for the user, to have them import the whole thing so they could look at your document whenever it is they choose to, so they can store it, or discreetly import the various attributes. And then she had it broken down by, if you're part of the trauma registry, you need to be able to discreetly import those attributes that are going to support your trauma data submissions. And the quality, there was a quality option in there somewhere. Similarly, though, they would need to import those attributes if they're going to support any of the EMS quality reports. As far as the document sharing part that Andrea was referencing just now, typically you're going to implement your content profile, prove that you can create either a properly formatted CDA document or a properly formatted FHIR composition document for this profile. And you would typically do that in conjunction with a transport, whether it's like direct, which is XDR. In this case, one flavor of direct is cross enterprise reliable document interchange is what XDR stands for. XDS stands for cross enterprise document sharing. So there's a couple of infrastructure components that you can use to move the documents around. So just to help supplement what Andre was saying.
All right. Do we have any questions about what we just went over before we go on to the volume 3?
A little bit, yes. I asked a question already. Anybody else needs to jump in? So I was going to ask a little bit about, you have some of the NEMSIS stuff in that document. I'm wondering how much might have already been done as far as a crosswalk between the different elements. So anybody doing this will have to do some kind of mapping onto, from the NEMSIS set onto this set. And I wonder if there's any kind of a crosswalk gap analysis that might exist already.
Yes, I do have some gnarly tables for it. I have a personal open issue for myself as well, since some of the tables seem to be a little outdated, but they are located, and I actually have here, let me show you. I actually have, it's one of these, this here, which this is my reference for the tables before. So this is, I'm having a hard time seeing this. Okay, so we have our, this is based off the FHIR piece as well, just for reference. So we have like what the FHIR composition, resource, and minor sections are here. And these are the NEMSIS elements. And I did put the NEMSIS ID here so it can be more easily followed as well.
Yeah, Andrea, this is Clay. I don't think we're seeing this. We're seeing the
Table contents.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah, table contents.
Line 100 we're seeing.
All right.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Okay,
there we
cool.
go. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that. Yes, so this is the Excel sheet that I have been doing a lot of my updated crosswalking stuff here.
Okay.
And so I believe my CDA section is in a different document. I'm in the process of pulling it over here, but this is the FHIR mapping that goes for each of the NEMSIS data elements here. And I do have the NEMSIS ID here so that it can be very clear as to which element we're talking about as well. And this will be in the profile as well. It should be in the volume 3 appendices.
Okay.
But it's just for some reason it didn't get updated properly. But this is, and I can see if I can give this to you guys to like review if you would like.
Okay. So if, along those lines also, does the other way exist? So here are elements. So there's probably a lot of ones in NEMSIS that don't go into this particular document. And the other vice versa of that, are there elements in this profile that are not in NEMSIS that are potentially required? And even further than that, are there ones where, I think there was one mentioned in an open issue that there's a definition difference, and I wonder how much of those have been captured already.
So as far as I'm aware, there's no data elements here that are not that are required here that are not required in NEMSIS standard, as far as I can tell. It's more likely that something in the NEMSIS standard doesn't quite fit into here. And for the most part, they would be things like the yes and no indicators that are in NEMSIS. So we have, for example, there's the, like I said, I'm going to make you dizzy for a second. So we have in our problem section, we have things like the cardiac arrest. So here it would be represented as a coded concept. So to say, cardiac arrest took place and is an active problem, right? And in the NEMSIS standard, of course, the cardiac arrest is was there a cardiac arrest event that happened, and it's a Boolean yes or no. So there are a few of these, and I mean, I can put together a spreadsheet with this information as well. Because I mean, I believe I have already made this this spreadsheet. It's been a while since I looked at it, but we can provide a crosswalk for that as well. It would live in the appendices of the profiles. Yes, and if it's very US-centric, it would be living in the appendices of volume 4.
Yeah, Andrea, this is Clay. I think this will be great additions. I think this will really help with the movement towards FHIR. Kelly Clark from Image Trend asked a great question. Is there a compliance or testing process we need to be aware of? From the NEMSA side, just to speak to that a little bit, and then Andrea, it would be great to kind of have an overview from you or Lori about the IHE process and how that can be helpful to vendors. But there's no, from the NEMSA's tax side, there's no formal compliance process like you go through as a vendor gaining compliance to the NEMSA standard. So I think from the NEMSA's tax point of view, from the Office of EMS points of view, we provide resources to allow these type of resources to be available. But from the NEMSA's tech side, there's no testing for compliance. Do you want to speak a little bit, Lori or Andrea, to the IHE process?
I mean, I can give an overview, and then Lori is a little bit better with the details of Connectathon specifically. But basically, the IHE Connectathon is the opportunity to test this profile. And it is conformance testing. So if you test this profile, it means that you've developed the profile enough for deployment, and that test is to say, yes, I'm conformant to this standard. And of course, if you are testing with a hospital system as well, and they support this, that also means that they are ready to deploy that in their product as well. So that is, I mean, that's like the big part of IHE is the Connectathon, is to test the profile, make sure it works, try to make a successful exchange of data compliant to this profile between you and a receiving system. And so that is it's a very valuable, I would say, experience for this. But while it's not required, it is something that, you know, IHE obviously encourages heavily. And Lori, I mean, can you would you like to go in a little bit more detail, because that's a high overview, but, you know, of course you know more about the specific details of this.
Yeah, no problem. So we're moving towards more continuous cycles, but at the moment right now, IHE has a Connectathon event every January. It turns out this year, because of the pandemic, it was last week virtually, but generally we have it face-to-face in January. That brings together actually several hundred vendors across the spectrum of health information technology, from radiology to labs and health IT infrastructure, HIEs and EHRs, public health systems. And at that event, they will formalize your conformity testing to this. It's not certification, but it does formalize your conformance to the profile. And this is, you know, designed to be identifying the system and the version that you're testing with, so that you can publish an IHE integration statement as part of your product, so that your customers know that they are purchasing a product that's conformant to the profile. You're typically required to test with 3 partners. Sometimes they'll make exceptions if we don't have, 3 implementers of that partner system. But as long as there are enough partners, you would be required to test with 3 different ones, so that we know that those different variants are arise when you test with an alternate system, that those are appropriately tested. And they'll also make sure that the rigor is correct. So while you may not be tested to optional pieces, if it's a required if known attribute, then they're going to give you data and expect that you populate that so that your product is robust enough for that conformance.
Hey, this is Kelly with ImageTrend. I had one follow-up question. I saw that there was a membership fee in order to participate in some of the committee activities. I'm wondering if that is part of the Connect-a-thon or where that actually plays into the IHE FHIR integration. I'm just curious how that would work. Thank you.
I'm going to pass this to Lori because the membership thing is a little bit more out of my.
Yeah, they recently added a small fee to be a member of the committees. I really haven't been part of what the financing is behind it. It used to be primarily funded through the IHE sponsors, which has been HIMSS and the Radiological Society of North America, ACC, various sponsorship organizations have supported the IHE and its infrastructure and the product developments. And so they needed to supplement that with membership fees in the last couple of years.
And sorry, I was just going to say that membership also is encouraged as well because it, all these profiles that are being developed are, I don't think the right word is open source, but it is available to anyone to use.
Yeah.
And the membership helps support that aspect of this so that whatever profile that's being developed can be available for everybody.
Andrea, this is Clay. I'll ask another question that's been kind of added to the chat, maybe a slight revision of it. So this work that you've done here is primarily compliant with version 3.5.0. I know that we're going to spend some time and resources doing a careful walk through that. Can you speak a little bit to the idea of the addition of a UUID in NEMSIS version 3.5, where we're trying to provide a unique identifier that allows for the easy update of records, right? So if a provider is going to update a record to the state or to an HIE, that they would be able to use that process. We haven't talked about this yet. Have you incorporated the idea of a UUID in your work?
So a lot of the work that we do for I would say like patient matching is what would have to do with having access to that ID. I mean, I don't think that I've seen that data element, but I do try to make the patient like the EMS patient ID as a required if known element, so that the documents can be more easily identified on your end if you're getting so say if you're getting like a push from the core profile where someone sends you this person's data, like they have to like link it to the patient ID that comes in through the PCS.
Yeah,
That's
most of these documents include the kind of a generic concept of an identifier, and then the issuing authority is really where you get whose ID it is. That's within the content of the data. Also, some of these data sharing mechanisms include metadata about the patient information that you're carrying, and so it's possible that it might belong up in the metadata, but it should otherwise map to the identifiers.
Great, thank you.
This is Josh Legler. Yeah, we might want to touch base with you a little bit on the UUID and related identifiers. In particular, the UUID is a record identifier that identifies the NEMSIS record. It's not a patient identifier. And then there are patient identifiers potentially in the NEMSIS data. So it might be good for us to kind of walk through those with you, maybe in an offline discussion, just make sure that the conceptual approach to all of those identifiers is accurate.
That'd be great.
Yeah, Josh, this is Clay. You were a little hard to hear, but I think that would be incredibly valuable. We'll make sure we do that with Andrea. Thank you.
Okay.
So
Sorry. Yes.
I was wondering if you might be able to go through a few of the higher level, project level description of how this project came about, what the timelines are, and kind of what the steps that the committee goes through are going to be.
Okay. Yes. So for the how this came about was a funny story. I was working as an EMT basic in Boston area with as a interfacility patient transport truck, and there's like no data information being passed between the hospitals and those EMS people. And quite literally every single time I had to hand write every single patient report from scratch to get things as basic as patient medical history, medications, and everything, etc. Even though their data was available in the hospital that they were being discharged from. And so I brought this concern to the standards committees, and we realized there really isn't any profiles that that go through this, well, not go through, but there's no standards that really mapped out how to get this data exchange going between hospitals and EMS systems as well. So that was kind of like the conception of the project. This project has been going on for, oh God, several years. I would say about at least 4 years. 4 years between each of the profiles that I had created, as well as the time that I've reopened these to update them, one to the NEMSIS 3.5 release, because I realized that it was going to become out of date if I didn't, and then also because FHIR R4 had an update, and then a secondary is because we had just finished the International Patient Summary project, which is a very popular project, and there was interest in moving the base elements, not elements, but like the base structure of the document from what we had kind of put together to bring it to the structure of the International Patient Summary, to bring it into a more international space and have a little bit more clarity on the structure of this document as well. And so this document right now, this one and the interfacility transport are out for public comment, which means that I've done the majority of the revisions that I believe are needed to be done. And this is submitted to the public for anybody to read and submit comments from anything from like, you have a typo here, to this data element shouldn't be, to as granular as the cardinality of this data element should be reduced to an optional thing rather than a required element. So, and then once we finish with the public comment period, then I, as the author, will go through each of the comments of the public comment period, each of the comments that were submitted. And if they're typos, I'll just go through the document, like a new file of the document, and update the typos. And if they're like discussion pieces, the committee will have a discussion based off of the comment. So say the comment is disputing the reason for a section, or they're disputing the reason for the cardinality change. They'll either, the people in the committee will have a discussion and they'll either say, yes, this makes sense, make the change, or no, this is an inappropriate, not, I wouldn't say inappropriate, but they'll just be like, there's a reason why it's this way. And, you know, it'll either accept or reject a comment as well. And then once we've gone through all of the comments that were submitted, then the profile will go into trial implementation. And trial is when you can pick up the document and start building your systems on it, and then bring it to Connectathon. And if there's any issues that pop up along the way, where something needs to be changed because it doesn't work or because it needs to be updated, we go through change proposals, which is basically it's a one-page document essentially. Well, it can be more than one page, but depending on how big the change is. But it's a one-page document saying these are the changes that we would like to make, and then the committee will either vote yes, you can make those changes, or no, you can't make those changes. Usually it's along the lines of yes, but then we go through that and the public comment is taken in, and then the profile is then updated. And that turnaround is actually pretty quick. And you know, you continue this process, and I believe, Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, but after 3 successful Connectathons, you can, like, successful IKA, like you've passed it, the profile is available to become normative.
Yeah, there's a couple of different criteria. They do request, I think it's actually 2 successful Connectathons. They don't have to be in the US. Their Connectathons actually run all over the world, or, you know, at least like Asia, Europe, South America, or the North American. So it needs to successfully go through 2 Connectathons with no changes to the profile to identify that it's stable, and it has to have been implemented by enough and approved by the committee. So it is a judgment call in the end, but those are the underlying criteria. It's very difficult to change things once it hits final text, so they want to have things very rigorous. There are some vendors that won't implement until they know that there will be no more changes for certain profiles. This is probably not one of the ones that would be that complex, but to prevent implementation.
Well, if personally, I would say this would likely not go to normative before I would say FHIR stops updating, because yeah.
Well, I don't know about FHIR stopping updating, but yeah, you're right. There's a lot of impact on the FHIR aspects. The CDA part could potentially move in part. I can tell you that some of our public health profiles, we've been working on vital records since 2008, and the stakeholders in, you know, the states and federal agencies have made transitions along the way, and they're finally starting to put that stake in the ground. So some of this can take a long time, but it's really driven by the industry.
And a side note, which is generally, it has some relation, is that I'm also doing a bit of a crosswalk analysis as well, because to connect with the US CDI requirements that are coming up from as well, because I do recognize that that is something very important that's coming up. And while the International Patient Summary is great, there are some aspects of this that are not covered by US CDI. So I'm going to create a crosswalk for this profile that identifies those gaps. And I believe most of this profile actually does cover this, cover some of those gaps, because of the just because of the nature of the information that is being passed does cover a lot of what US CDI also requires. So just another side note, and possibly something we can also put in an appendix of some kind. We can work on the US CDI mapping as well, because I know that is very important, and the US CDI and IPS crosswalk mapping has not gone into process yet, but obviously I'm willing to do that here because it is very important.
And how often are those committee meetings?
So the patient care coordination meets bi-weekly on Fridays at 3 o'clock Eastern time. And the quality, CORF committee, that's the Quality Research and Public Health. They meet every Thursday, I think at 12 o'clock Eastern time. Is that correct, Lori?
Yes, Thursdays at noon for QRPH.
Yes. Yep, and of course, Lori is the, I believe, technical co-chair of that committee. No,
I'm one of the
Planning.
two planning co-chairs.
I get it wrong every time.
Yeah,
She's
that's
planning. I am the co-chair for the patient care coordination. Well, one of the two co-chairs, and in patient care coordination as well. So we're, if you need any assistance with that as well, we can help you.
And you have to be a member to listen in on the meetings?
You don't, I believe, have to be a member to listen in on the meetings, but I believe that membership is kind of starting to be a little bit more of a requirement to develop work items.
Yeah, it's mainly to do with the intellectual property, so that this can remain publicly available. So the membership is required for contributing to it. I've had some folks that, if they're not able to get their own membership, they've been able to come in, say, under CDC or, other venues where there is membership there for the organization. Also, if you're trying to listen in on here or there, we can get an invite to the session to make sure that you're able to, listen in.
Okay.
Yes, and I believe I sent the majority of everyone's, at least everyone that I know of, is their email to our managers there who deal with the invites and distribution lists, to include you in the distribution. And let me know if you haven't received any notification that you've, like from someone named like Sarah Bell or Nicole Knox, about, being added to a distribution list and membership and meeting invites, because I'll get on top of that. If you haven't, just send me an email about this and I'll work on it. And yeah. Is there, are there any other questions that you'd like to ask? Is there anything that you would like me to go through? If you would like access, not access, but if you would like me to email you this spreadsheet as well, please send me like a personal email so I can send you that that spreadsheet that I have over here.
This is Josh Legler again with the right mic this time. Just a real general question. I'm trying to get a picture of how IHE fits into the overall landscape of things. My naive assumption is that HL7 publishes the CDA and FHIR standards, and a vendor could grab those and implement them. So I'm trying to figure out what IHE kind of adds to that equation.
So IHE takes what HL7 puts out and builds on it. So in this context, this is you can okay. So I'll just take it back. So if you are a vendor and you say you're CDA compliant, right, or you're FHIR compliant, but you still It does not imply that everybody who is CDA and FHIR compliant will submit the same paramedicine care summary. And so what IHE does is that it breaks down kind of like almost use cases in what kinds of information you're interested in mapping out and supporting. So I obviously this is not very eloquent of me. So in this case, we are taking the use case of the paramedicine care and saying, if you want to support a paramedicine care summary, you are gonna these are the elements that you have to have, and these are where those elements are going to live in a CDA or FHIR document. And the second part of what IHE does that is the conformance testing. The conformance testing is very rigorous, and it is one of IHE's like strengths in being able to provide vendors is the ability to get this tested, get it tested in the Connectathon with partners, and make it so that these capabilities are able to be deployed in products in a shorter, I would not necessarily shorter, but in a little bit of a tighter turnaround than HL7.
Yeah.
So if you kind of look at it like a pyramid, HL7 is kind of like the base standards, and IHE is kind of like gets more, it does get more specific. Sorry for cutting you off, Lori.
No. You pretty much have it. So, and historically, HL7 would publish the foundation standards, and then IHE would profile it based on use cases. More recently, HL7 has started doing implementation guides, and those IGs get a little less obvious as to where HL7's base standard ends and IHE's use case profiling for interoperability begins. But I do a lot of work with HL7 public health domain, with vital records. We take the work that's built out in HL7, we bring it into IHE, we further profile anything that might need either international aspects or things that we discover during implementation that will further profile. Sometimes we go back and forth with HL7, and we identify in IHE some attributes that were off or missing when it's going into implementation. We cycle that back to HL7. In this case, for EMS, I think HL7 has an older work product. I forgot the name of it, but it's basically your patient care summary with the NEMSIS mapping. That's definitely aged work. So what you have in IHE is more recent, at least as it currently stands. And I don't believe that there's any FHIR documents currently specified in HL7, but they are through this one in IHE. The HL7 FHIR Connectathon generally is, I would distinguish it in terms of it's much more working things out, kind of informing the development of a standard. It's kind of I would call it more of a hackathon in that you're bringing the engineers together and they're kind of trying different things out. Whereas the IHE Connectathon is formalized testing of conformity to that specification that should be mature enough to be in product at that point. Not sure if that helps.
Yeah, Andrea, this is Clay. Great presentation. First, is it okay if I post your email address just in the chat, so if folks want to gain access to the spreadsheet crosswalk you're doing, they can have that? Is that okay to do?
Yeah, that's perfectly okay. And yes, like I said, anyone who is interested in being a part of the committees and hasn't received that information, send me like a quick email with your contact information, or anyone in your company that you would like to have access as well, and I will work it out.
Okay, fantastic. And maybe just in in the last 1 or 2 minutes that we have, there were a couple of comments. Billy and Drew were talking about, that this is probably the profile that talks about moving the patient care summary into the hospital, and that's true. Can you briefly just describe the other 2 profiles that we will be sharing tomorrow and then on the V3 implementation call on Wednesday?
Yes, let me just check which one is tomorrow. Yes, okay, so tomorrow is for the routine. Oh, sorry, you're probably seeing my email. Tomorrow is the routine interfacility patient transport. We did have a title change for it. It's referral for interfacility patient transport. The title on that one's a little weird because it doesn't really talk about everything that it does. Because anyway, so that profile is around the use case of discharging a patient from a hospital to anywhere and having a transport available for that. So obviously this was the first profile that I wrote based off of my experience as an EMT as well. And so this specifies the kind of information that comes out. And in comparison to the Paramedicine Care Summary, it is more of a, it is basically, it has everything except encounter. It has like the basis of the International Patient Summary, which is like the social history, medications, lab results, functional status, etc. That comes with it. It has all that information except for the encounter information that that the Paramedicine Care Summary provides here. So we have so that's basically, it's a lot of repeat information. It's just excluding the unneeded, well, not unneeded, but the information that you're probably not always going to need that comes from a hospital. And I have had questions in the past about this in relation to patient Paramedicine Care Summary when you're having an emergency interfacility transport, and that should be submitted as a public comment because it's a very important discussion to have. And the other profile that is in the QUIRF domain is the quality outcomes reporting for EMS. And our nickname for it is CORE. Not nickname, it's just how we pronounce the acronym. That is basically getting the outcomes data that is in the hospital back to the provider who submitted the patient, brought in the patient and submitted the initial Paramedicine Care Summary, just to close the care loop that you guys have. And it does also include registry reporting as well as a capability in the profile, but its main data elements are mapped in for the outcome from the e-outcomes in Nemesis, and the rest are kind of examples of what else you can do with the transaction that we created there. So and the core discussion is kind of an overview of that profile and an overview of the detailed proposal that we will be submitting and presenting on Thursday this week for to, I believe, open up a US US-centric volume to really dig into the Nemesis elements that, just to make it as 100% Nemesis compliant in the US section. And I believe to provide example templates for the document, for that document as well.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. Yeah, this is Clay again. Thank you for that. So a great overview. It'll be great to be involved in those 2 other discussions. I want to be mindful of people's time. We're a little bit over. Drew asked some great questions. Hey, Chris, can you keep track of these questions, and then let's pick this up tomorrow. I think the question that Drew asked would be appropriate for any of these 3 profiles. We can pick that up tomorrow, and I could also answer it on Wednesday if folks are interested. So, but again, we want to want to be mindful of people's time. Andrea, Lori, thank you so much for spending the time going through this document, and we look forward to a discussion of the interfacility transfer of care document that we'll be discussing tomorrow. Thanks, folks.